What's up, party people? This is Tarkus Mossberg here from Facebook. We're going to talk about CGC labels, the old labels, the new labels, the red labels. Do you value a 9.8 in an old label? Do you value in a newer label? Someone brought up the question of the day, and I had some interesting comments. I think they're interesting, anyways. I'm trying to have a comic book in the background, just because all my comic books are put away. I don't have all the pretty stuff on the walls like a lot of the YouTubers. So yeah, I got a Punisher number 1, 9.8 laying out up for sale. Zelda number 1, 9.8. I focus on 9.8s. That Punisher signed by Mike Zeck. I got Daredevil 90, 9.8. Great Black Widow. And then a 9.8 Captain Savage Leatherneck Raiders over there, all available. Anyway, so someone put up a question. They're probably looking at two different books that are 9.8, and one's an old label and one's a new label. A lot of people say if they're encased, they're fine, and that's the whole point of encasing them. As someone who buys a ton of books on auctions, I get a lot of old cases and new cases. Some people may not like the aesthetics of the older labels. For a while there, the red labels, was that the early CGC labels? They were real popular. They're selling for more than fair market value typically. And that was because people thought CGC applied more stringent grading criteria back then. And so a 9.8, I guess conceivably could be a 9.9, but more likely a 9.6 might be, clean and pressed and become a 9.8. So there was a premium paid for the red labels. Well, then the red labels went away, and then there's the old labels, and you can tell by the serial number on there, and you can look up the CGC code and see what date it was. And this guy was looking at a book from 2002. So that's 23 years in a case. I have never seen a video that really looked at the scientific proof of how safe these books are in these cases. I think the plastics have gotten better over years. I think the technology has gotten better, which means the technology back then was worse. If there's a crack, if moisture can get in there, can foxing continue to spread? Is foxing a thing that spreads? Is that like mold? I'm not too sure. I do know that when you press a book, there's paper memory. So even a new book that's newly pressed and graded a 9.8, within a few months, you might be able to tell in there with some curves that it doesn't look pristine anymore. You might complain about the grading. Well, a presser told me there's paper memory, and paper goes back to the original state. So the pressing is just for the grade, and then it'll go back to its original state inside the case, conceivably. So I'm not how should I say this? The older labels, look up look up GBA, look up that data, find out how many times it's sold. If that number, if it's a rarer book, and you can look up the CGC number, and if it's traded hands a lot on GPA, that's a lot of mailing back and forth. That's a lot of thrown around in boxes. You'll look at books inside the case, and you'll see some white sticking out, and that might have been the paper that they put inside. Sometimes you'll see the actual pages sticking out the edge, and that could be a problem with the wrap. But these cases aren't bulletproof, and whoever had these cases, they either could have taken care of them or not taken care of them. They could have been playing frisbee around the house. Someone's girlfriend could have gotten mad at them and threw it across the house. And that little crack on it is because someone threw it across the house, and now they're selling it at an auction, and the auction sites don't give refunds. That's why people sell these big books on auction houses. They don't give refunds. You don't like it? Tough. I know I've gotten burned. I've gotten burned in a couple ways where your bid is your bid and there's no refunds. Whereas eBay, you can do not as described, and you can get a refund if you get it in-house and you look at it. So a lot of the people that have 9.8 books that may not look great when you have them up front, they will sell them on these auction houses. So you wonder, why are people getting such great deals on auction houses? Sometimes that is the case. But we're talking about the old labels. I'm not even getting into the CBCS old labels and new labels, but I think the philosophy is the same. But 25 years of it all depends on how this collector handled them. I think if you shake them enough now, PSA is a brand new plastic, hard as nails. I don't know how safe the interiors are. The outer side plastic is heavy and solid, but the inside plastic's that what holds it in place. You know, can the plastic inner case accidentally grip to the cover and pull those covers back and forth against the inside pages, potentially causing a rip on the staple. You have what is it? I was going to call them onion rings. What are those rings that CGC has that looks like oil on them? It's not a moisture, but it's something where the plastic is touching it, and it has those little rainbow Newton rings. Don't know why the word Newton is in there, but is that a problem in where that it causes a suction against the paper, and that's where you see that colored rainbow look? And is that actually causing a friction with the outside pages so the inside pages can move up and down and back and forth? So an older label, I think, is riskier. You don't know where it came from. You don't know what damage it was done. I cracked an 8.0 Silver Age book to get it regraded, thought it was in better condition. Came back a 3.5. Why? The pages were brittle. They weren't brittle going in, supposedly, unless a grader just messed it. But could the pages get more brittle inside the case? Could any of the chemicals that people use to clean and press books stay in the book after it's been encased and cause those pages to become more brittle? I don't think someone put a whole lot of money into the book I was talking about. It was an $80 book, and now it's a $30 book. So I don't think someone, did all those sophisticated chemicals to try to get it in the highest grade possible. But what I'm saying is, how much can the book deteriorate inside the case? This is, and people fight me on there, like, no, when it's cased, it's safe. That might be true, but us buyers are not 100% sure. We're not 100% sure. 25 years in a case, let's say 2002, it's 2026 almost. That's a lot of time for things to happen. The older cases didn't have the same technology as the newer cases. That inner well, I don't even know if the old cases has the inner well. Now, this is a totally different argument than the argument that people make of the older books may not have been cleaned and pressed. And so in that regard, some of the older books people want to go after because cleaning and pressing wasn't as popular. CGC didn't have it in the beginning. And so someone throws in a Grail, X-Men 1, whatever, didn't clean and press it, just got it graded in 2002, and it's been sitting in that case ever since. The past person dies, and the people put it up for sale out of the state, and it's someone else's problem. And so a lot of people will go in and try to get those older books, specifically to see if they can do a clean and press and improve it. Again, if you're getting the red labels, supposedly they graded more harshly back then, and maybe it's a 7.0 and you want to try to bump it to a 9 or something like that. There's people looking for that opportunity. So it's back and forth. You got some people that are like, it's a 15-year-old label 9.8 versus another book that's 9.8. Well, the book that was graded in the last 2 years, we know it was graded in the last 2 years. Whereas the other book's 15 years old and it hasn't been graded in 15 years. So could there be damage inside? Sometimes the older labels just maybe look a little faded. I don't know if you've noticed them. Maybe they didn't want it to stand out. Maybe that was the argument that CBCS started. They didn't want the label to stand out and be bright, so they had some faded colors, but it looks like it's a sun-faded label. And so you're like, has that been sitting in the sun? I don't know. So I've noticed some of the older labels, they just look faded, less crisp, harder to read, smaller print, and it's not as attractive. And so maybe the lack of attractiveness deters some buyers. So going to CBCS now, I've talked about this before, Their grading has been suspect. I think whether it's a new label or an old label, it doesn't matter, but I think they've always graded too harsh on the lower graded books. You know, the Silver Age, 2.5s, 1.5s, big keys. I think that they didn't grade the way CGC does and gives preference to older books. So some of the older CBCS mega keys, AF-15, Amazing Spider-Man 1, X-Men 1, I would love to get those CBCS books and then turn around and crack them and press them and clean them and grade them, because I think CGC will give a higher grade. So whether that's an older label or a newer label, some people say, I think they give 9.8s too easy, CBCS, and I think they're too harsh on the lower grades. But that's a personal preference, and I've seen it with some of the videos. I saw, what's the guy, Dave from Collectors Comics? Is it Collectors Comics? He sent in a whole bunch to CBCS and got graded, and he did his estimate grade, and they all came back lower than his estimate, and he's been grading a lot. So I got the impression, reinforced from that video, that all of his CBS books came back lower than what he estimated them at. And so I think they have a different criteria than CGC on the older, lower grade criterion. So anyways, would I buy an older grade? Yes. Is it more of a gamble? I think so. I think there's a lot of room for it to potentially get damaged. We still don't know if foxing was really, really tight. I still don't know what foxing is. Maybe I need to do a chat GPT to find out what foxing is. But is that something that can grow inside the case? Does that need oxygen? I don't really know. Can pages get more brittle inside the case? I don't really know, the longer it is. So, but if you go back to buy the book and not the grade, you could have an old label that looks clean, a new label with an obvious tick. I'd pick the old label that looks clean all day long. So in that regards, doesn't carry more weight than what the eye test carries. So I did a video on this the other day. A lot of graders could be having a bad day and they missed something and gave a book a higher grade than it deserves. That just happens across all grading carriers. So looking at the books, the problem with some of these auction sites is they don't have the back page, except for maybe the Grails. They just have the front page, and that becomes harder. But that's also, again, why they sell for less, because it's more of a gamble. So anyways, a little insight, but someone talked about this yesterday, and most of the comments were that it would be fine. That's why you get it graded. It's perfect forever. And I don't agree with that. And I've tried to comment before, and some people have visceral reactions. Well, of course it's perfect. That's why they graded it. Nothing can happen inside the case. And it's just not true. Anyways, happy hunting, guys.